Hey, what's going on, YouTube? Nick here from the Real Heroes Show with my buddy Ben here, as always, covering the Wheel of Time series on Amazon Prime. And we got to the penultimate episode. Ben, how you doing today?
I'm doing real well. How you doing, Nick?
Yeah, I'm doing well. It's a toasty Tuesday here. It's a bit rainy down Florida, but what else is new?
Yeah, right.
um, so for those of you that haven't watched this episode yet, it's a really good episode. Of course, both of us highly advise you to watch it first before you watch our video. We're gonna go in depth and follow our characters through the ways and through the fortress city of Fal Dara. So to kick off this episode here for us, uh, we get a pretty interesting cold open, right?
Yes. Yep.
What can you tell us about this cold open? Because obviously, from my stance, I had to pause it and let Amazon Prime tell me, it's if I pronounce her name correctly, Tigraine Mantir or Tigraine
Yes.
Mantir, however you want
Yep.
to call it. But my quick notes were, who is she? Who's she fighting for? Who's the other army? Right? Those were my initial thoughts, and we find out over the course of this episode the truth behind it all. But is there anything else you kind of want to add? Because she was a hell of a fighter. I'm like,
Yes.
she's pregnant and she's holding her own against multiple men and
Yeah.
killing them viciously. I might add, which was great to see.
So what we're seeing is we're getting a flashback to the Aiel War, and the Aiel War was fought between the Aiel and all of the other countries of what is commonly referred to as Randland. But the Aiel are separate. They live in a very inhospitable environment where nobody else dares to live.
Hmm.
You'll notice that this is not the first Aiel we've met.
Right.
We actually met one a few episodes ago with Matt and Tom and Rand. Aiel are also mentioned by Loyal
Right.
in how they are very noticeable by their red hair, which our fighter definitely has.
Yes.
She is officially a Maiden of the Spear. Aiel are different in that their women are part of their army, they're fighters. So that's why we saw this maiden being so vicious with those two those two short spears that she carried. And then at the very end, we see her giving birth to a young son who is taken in by a man with a heron marked blade,
Hmm.
wearing armor that is marked with the 9 Bs of Ilion. And that turns out to be our friend Tamal Thor.
Yeah. Which I thought all that was really interesting by the time they kind of connect the beginning and the end for the most part. So it's gonna to me, of course, also might be jumping ahead a little bit here, but in the episode, we see Rand having these visions or this dream, right, where he's trying to
Mm-hmm.
sleep, but he wakes up because he has these thoughts. We see a little flash of the sword with the heron on it, and he's just trying to, you know, practice his archery skills.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he also has some whispers, some words in his head that says he is the dragon reborn,
Yes.
and
And
the Machin Shin that's
mm-hmm.
talking to him, right? Or is I don't know if it was still in his head, or I think it was just kind of playing it back again from what it was initially said to him while they were going through the ways.
Yeah, I think it's definitely him replaying what he heard from the Black Wind, and that's
Right,
what Machin Shin translates to from the old tongue.
right,
While they were in the ways. So, as you mentioned, we do start off after this cold open. We start off in the ways. Our merry band of heroes are walking along these rocky paths. Um, Land starts questioning Moraine, excuse me, and sort of what her motivation is in leaving Matt behind.
right.
He wonders, could Matt still be the Dragon Reborn?
Yeah,
And Moraine says, well, if he is, he's got this darkness inside him. I don't want him anywhere near the Dark One.
right.
So It's a very interesting development that, would she have brought him along if he came willingly? Yeah, it's a good question. I'm left thinking myself. Um,
Yeah.
and then we sort of make our way through the ways. Once again, we get a little bit of Perrin exposition. He's able to see through this darkness and pick out a guiding stone very easily. Nobody else was able to see it, so that's going to obviously mean something. Well, of what we're not yet sure.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting as well. Of course, my initial thought as well was him being able to see it further on in the dark was because of his yellow eyes, his wolf-like eyesight, perhaps, or something along those lines, where he has this inherited trait that kind of gives him a little bit of a different ability than the rest of the uh, his friends.
Hmm.
Even for I wouldn't say even for like Lan or Moraine as well, but he's the one who says something first before anyone else. And
Yeah,
as they get closer, they realize that there's claw marks on this on the guiding, which was some sort of rune-like stone, I'm guessing.
yeah. So a guiding stone is used for the navigation of the ways. Um, each way gate, once you enter, you step through, and on the first island, and that's what they're known as, islands and bridges in the ways. The first island is always going to contain a guide stone, and that
Mm.
guide stone is going to tell you how to get to either the next guide stone that'll get you along your path, or how to find the way gate that will get you to your destination.
Yeah, and I thought that was pretty interesting, especially the remarks from Loyal. And his I thought it was kind of humorous, where he says there's something worse than falling in a bottomless pit. And I really wanted him to say what it was, but they stopped him, and I was like, "Ah, come on!" Like,
It's probably Machin Shin. Generally, in addition to the whispers in the ears in the books, Machin Shin is also being described as sort of a somewhat sentient being
mm,
that will devour your soul.
interesting.
Like,
Hmm,
yeah, so there are other Ogier who have had unfortunate encounters with Machin Shin, and they're alive, but they're frequently described as having the light in their eyes having left them. So they're there, but they're not all there, so to speak.
right. And of course we find out that a Trolloc has made its way through the ways, and
Hmm.
there's this like these other creatures that I'm not going to say that they're like bat like, but that's something that can fly and swarm, which I wasn't sure if Nynaeve willingly stood up to it, or if she was almost compelled, and then just kind of released her power, as she once did, a couple episodes ago when she was in front of Logain. Do
Yeah.
you think that she did it by choice, or was she just sort of like almost drawn to it in a little bit of an uncontrolling type of way?
So the swarm is what I interpreted as much in Shin,
Okay.
and so I think it was Nynaeve acting out of desperation to protect her charges from the two rivers. You can see that she's very protective of Rand and Perrin and Egwene,
Right.
and so I think this is just her way of doing it. I don't think she at this point has much control over the one power. She is what is known as a wilder. She's gone ahead and channeled without being guided to do so. So what she can do at this point, while very powerful, is probably very very difficult for her to control. Whether or
Yeah.
not she can um, summon the one power at will or make it do exactly what she wants to do is yet to be seen. But unlike Egwene, who has had a little bit of training with Moiraine, Nynaeve is a little bit more reacting on instinct as opposed to having an innate control over what she's able to do.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And again, I imagine maybe over the course of the oncoming seasons, again, it's just me supposing that she makes the decision to join an Aja, and then starts to be able to harness it more. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, I guess. But and I thought that was interesting when Moraine says, I think it was Loyal said, one of the two said that you shouldn't use the one power, but she uses it. And I know it was more of a desperation attempt to protect everyone so that Moraine could open the portal to get out to their destination, which they do safely, of course.
Yeah.
Um,
I think at
and,
that point, they had already gone past the don't use the one power because
yeah,
Martin Shin is attracted to the one power. So when
right.
we see Egwene and Rand together, and Egwene seemingly protects everybody using her small amount of the one power. Um,
Yeah,
that's what drew Machin, to save them from the Trolloc. That's what drew Machin Shin. And at that point in time, it's like, well, that restriction was a great idea, but we're playing by a different set of rules now, so we do
right.
what we must.
Exactly. That no longer applies here. This is
Exactly.
to protect ourselves and our lives here so we can journey onward, which they do to the fortress city of Fal Dara, which uh, the Lord there has also called it the Borderlands,
Hmm.
which ironically, it being like a desert area, also reminded me of the video games Borderlands, which has a lot of deserts in it. Completely unrelated, of course, but the word is the word.
Yeah.
And I thought it was pretty interesting though, because this episode, as we stated last week in the the premiere synopsis, we learned a little bit more about our man Lan here,
Yes.
as he is welcomed home under the name of Dai Shan.
Yep.
So I'm like,
Daishan, which is also a fun fact in the old tongue, translates to battle lord.
oh, I did not know that.
So it gives
So
you a little bit of idea of what this lifestyle is like at the Borderlands. Malkier, of which we find out, um, and Fal Dara and Shanir and all of these various cities and countries along the Blight are part of the Borderlands. They are very much focused on holding back the shadow from the rest of
mm,
the world. The shadow, the Trollocs, the Fades, they all come in from the Blight to try and attack the rest of the world. And so, whereas when somebody in the Two Rivers owns only heard of Trollocs and Fades as children's stories, to scare little boys and girls into listening to their parents, somebody in Fal Dara knows that these are real creatures who are really trying to overrun the earth. So
right,
it's a different life that they've lived. Growing up knowing that if we fall, there will be just a free reign through to the rest of the world, and so we have to hold out at all cost. And in fact, Malkir was one of those cities that did fall at in doing so gave up everything.
hmm, interesting. Which is the interesting point here from what we're getting in this episode too, from hopefully I don't botch his name, but Lord Agomar Jagad.
Aguilar. Yeah, Aguilar.
Aguilar. I think my autocorrects messed it up here in my notes. But his it was his sister that
Hmm.
has said like, "Oh yeah, I'm aware," and if she had called out to you in the White Tower about there being a potential blight problem, but you needn't worry because we've been defending the blights and Trollocs off for over 1,000 years. We're well versed in this, but he apologizes to Moraine because Moraine's like, "That's not why I'm here, bro. I'm here because, well, we know why she's really here, which she doesn't say, but she
Hmm.
does to let him know that the Trollocs have found their way because of the Dark One through the ways, and you can kind of
Hmm.
see Lord uh, Aguilar kind of go, oh, okay,
Yeah.
send some troops over there ASAP because." now there's another front that they could potentially come through, which we get a slight cut scene to that area, the little the ways portal. And at first, I wasn't sure if we were going to tell whose legs and boots those were. But as the character continues to walk down the steps, I'm like, that's Matt, right? It seems
Um,
like it's
it's
Matt.
it's unknown at this point who that person is.
It
There
look
are there
that's
are there are hints given to a few different people. So I guess we'll find out next episode. But again, we are deviating from the books right now, so
oh
it could
really? Okay.
be one of a number of characters. Yes,
Hmm.
um, and yeah, it's very the fact that the Dark One is using the ways. Trollocs don't like the ways. Machin Shin will be very happy to devour a Trolloc or a Fade soul just as easily as non-Shadow Spawn. But the fact that they're
Interesting.
using the ways not only shows how desperate they are to launch surprise attacks, but it also gives them an underground essentially transport network around the world because you could they could come in through a waygate somewhere in the Blight and pop out in the middle of a city. We don't know where all the waygates are,
Right.
but but there was one right outside Tarvalon. So could you imagine if suddenly thousands and thousands of Trollocs just started coming through that particular waygate in the middle, just in view of Tarvalon, in the heart of the country?
Yeah.
It's very that's why Lord Aguilar was so concerned because these are this is a pathing that doesn't follow the normal rules of time and space. It could be a short march from the Blight to Tarvalon.
Right.
um, Obviously that's exactly what Moiraine was using it for. She was trying to get all the way to the Eye of the World, but unfortunately, Machin Shin had its own uh, its own say in that matter, and so she had to detour to the nearest waygate, which would put them out at Fal Dara.
Right. And one of the reasons why I thought it was Matt too is what follows up from Moraine when she asks Lady Amelisa, if my autocorrect didn't screw that name up either, but send a message to the White Tower, specifically to the Red Aja about Matt.
Hmm.
And to me, I'm like, was she just taking precaution because of the potential danger that Matt could entail, whether he is or he isn't the Dragon Reborn? Because she states even while they're going through the ways, there's still this darkness
Hmm.
within him that could again make him a threat. And so I'm really curious to see how that's all going to pan out, and if they're just going to watch him or if they're going to try and snag him. What will his friends with the Queen, Rand, Perrin, Nynaeve, like what will they think if the Red Aja kind of capture him? And it could be really interesting. And I think one of the other interesting things that would have made a little bit more sense, and we probably would have known a little bit more in that next scene when they go to the bartender, who obviously has like this gift of foresight,
Hmm.
and she goes through the company. Saying, well, this one has a white flame. This one has a ring of gold. This one has yellow eyes and blood on his chin. This one has, is with a baby. Whose baby? Don't know. It's just a baby. And then Moraine gets this news of the Amerlin seat will be her downfall, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's a load of information to take in.
It really is. Yeah, Min has this innate ability to see pieces of the pattern um, ahead of time, so she can see what the pattern is weaving before
Right.
it's actually woven. It's a very unique skill. Um, why is Moraine talking to the Red Aja, especially when we've seen the animosity between Reds and Blues?
Hmm.
If Matt is indeed, if he is the Dragon Reborn, if he's not the Dragon Reborn, if he can channel and he has darkness in him, that's probably not the best thing that they can do. So what she's banking on is that the Reds will be able to sort of take him in and restrain that power. Also, if he cannot channel, if he's not the Dragon Reborn, if he cannot channel, well, the Reds aren't going to kill him. The Reds don't kill people; they deal with misuses of the one power.
Right.
So if he's not misusing the one power, there's probably few safer places for him to be, which is kind of a weird thing to think about. But if he doesn't fit their prerogative, they will sort of catch, prod, and probably release at the end of the day. He won't be hurt because he can't be hurt. The three oaths protect him from them doing any damage to any harm to him. They can't do it because he's not shadow spawn and he won't attack them,
Right.
so they physically can't do anything to him. So it's actually a very it could be a safe haven for him. It also keeps him away from following them to the eye of the world and potentially running into the dark one, who could harness the darkness inside of Matt.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point to make. Which, if if that's how it turns out, then again, that makes complete sense to me. Um,
Hmm.
so I guess we'll see. Because is this part here relative to the books, or is this kind of like where it's sort of
This
going
is
on a
all new
crochet?
territory.
Okay,
This is
gotcha.
all new. So
So
this
we'll
is
find
pure
out.
conjecture on my part.
Gotcha. Okay. Um, so one of the other interesting parts in this episode is when the friends are they're arguing with each other. There's some words that are
Hmm.
said, and Nynaeve misspoke about Egwene. Perrin and Rand square off, right? Yeah, Rand says something about his parents' wife, and of course, this is all like the idea of the black wind getting in their heads, and the one thing I
Absolutely.
wrote was that Egwene, out of all of them, Egwene was like the voice of reason, and the one that was like, here's why we need to go with Moraine, and while the rest of them are somewhat hesitant,
Hmm.
especially with the whole thing about Matt, and um which again, it all gets resolved, I think, for the most part, because I think they're all ready to go with with Moraine and Lan. It's
And risk the death, which
right.
is
Yeah.
rather remarkable. But it
Yeah.
does lead to a schism that allows for a lot to happen, as
Yep.
we found out.
And I do want to say really quickly too, when Nynaeve learns more about Lan's past, right? She has dinner with his family, and or what seems to be his family, right?
I think it's more of an adoptive kind of family. I
Yeah,
think they
yeah,
were
yeah, yeah,
Malkieri. I don't recall exactly what the proper word is. They're from Malkier when it fell, and you know, to them, he is still their king, even though he doesn't have a kingdom. They are, and they don't have a land. They are still his. They see him as a lord, as a king, and so that's why I think they say to him, "Thank you for keeping our Daishan safe."
right, right,
It's this man has an unenviable fight. He is a king without a kingdom. He has no family because his family died fighting the shadow, um, and he's just one man against the shadow, and that's
right.
how he sees his life. He wants to dedicate it to destroying the shadow at all costs. It is both very honorable and also very dark at the same time.
Yeah, and the the words battle lord definitely
Hmm.
ring true to that extent, because of literally what you just explained. He wants to extinguish the shadow of which destroyed everything that he once knew, right? So
Yep.
um and he's very humble about it too, I feel like, especially with him uh in the relationship between him and Moraine. But as I put in my notes, I'm like, seems to be some sexual tension between Nynaeve and Lan. The next scene, I'm like, up, she went in the door. Okay, well, that's resolved.
Yeah.
Let me erase those notes. Um, but
Definitely comes to a head a lot faster in the show than it did the books.
okay, so
Yeah, the
that's
books,
actually the
it's
books,
a much longer dance around that, because Lan knows that he is in a one man war against the Shadow, and he sees the only resolution to that war is his death, and he doesn't want to truly he doesn't want to give a part of himself to to anybody at all, because he knows that the path that he's walking leads to death, and he doesn't want to, um, he doesn't want to make somebody a widow on their wedding day, so to speak.
Right. Right. Um, and he seems willing to take that risk to.
Yeah, a much different Lan in the show than in the books. Lan is very often humorless in the books. He's very stoic. He's very much sort of the old belief of what masculinity was.
Mm,
Where no emotions, carved out of stone. I go through life. I growl. I stare angrily at things.
right.
But the land that we get in the show is frankly a little bit more interesting because there are those other layers to him. And I'm sure people in the comments are going to say, well, Land does have his layers in the book, and he does. There
Right.
is more to him. He does crack the occasional joke, but I think we're getting a much more nuanced Land in the show, where he is um, just a different person. And I think both can exist. I'm sure people are going to have their favorites. I prefer book Land, I prefer TV Land, whatever, but I think both can exist because the world we're getting in the show is different than the world we're getting in the books, and so um, both can exist at the same time. Additionally, there's a bit more of an age gap in the books. Lan is generally described as having a white on his
Hmm.
temples, which I'm starting to get. So that probably puts him in, around my age, 35, if not a bit older. Nynaeve is much younger in the books.
Gotcha.
Egwene, when we first meet Rand and Egwene and Perrin, they're about 15, 16.
High
Nynaeve is
schoolers.
about, yeah, Nynaeve is a little bit older than they, so she's probably in the 23 to 25-year-old world. But so there is a huge age gap. It's never really mentioned as an age gap, but I'm wondering if that's sort of another reason the books went a little bit slower.
Yeah, it almost seems like in the show, like the Perrin, Rand, Gween, Matt, they're like kind of in the more college range, and then you've got
Yeah,
Nynaeve that's probably in her mid to late 20s.
yeah.
Uh,
The friend you knew, you met them in high school. They went to college before you did, and
right, exactly. Like I've
you're you're still
been there
figuring out how that
before.
dynamic works.
Right, exactly. Um, and I like one of the lines between Lan and Nynaeve because she's a little hesitant to fully devote herself to him
Hmm.
because she says you're bound, like you're owned by Moraine. He's like, I'm no more bound or owned to Moraine than you are to those kids.
Yeah.
And then he says a wisdom never weds as like a comparison, but then like they
Hmm.
smile, like they hold hands, and I'm like, eh, again, I'm uncertain for myself to see where their path leads,
Yeah.
as it
They
does from the
certainly
books.
have a lot more in common than I think they initially realized.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So, but no, I was kind of wondering if that's what was going to happen, and if we were going to see that sort of relationship materialize this season.
Hmm.
And as you mentioned, it happened a lot sooner in the show than it did the book. So, um, you know, uh, I guess cool.
Yeah. Hey, you know
you
what?
know, like
We have less time in the show.
exactly. So there's
We
their
have
time is of the
8
essence in the
seasons and
show,
14 books, so you
right?
got to compress some things, and I think it makes it much more interesting. So I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to seeing how that changes. And we also get another instance of Rand and Egwene, which is also not ever in the books, which leads to the biggest revelation of this episode.
Yep.
After Rand and Egwene sort of find comfort in each other ahead of what they think is certain death, Rand can't fall asleep, and he starts thinking about what his father said the night of the Trolloc attack, and we find
Right.
out a little bit more about Rand's backstory. And Rand finds out that he is not like Perrin, like Egwene, like Matt, a child of the Two Rivers. That he was brought in, that his father brought him from elsewhere, and that's what connects us back to the front of the show,
Yep.
when we see a young boy being birthed, and then we really get inside Rand's head, and Rand knows that he can channel, and we see instances of him channeling to escape the Dark Friend. And it turns out that in the ways he protected Egwene instead of Egwene protecting him. So we
Yeah.
get our big revelation that our Dragon Reborn is, at this point, at least as far as we can tell, a single person, and that the Dragon Reborn is like in the books. So all you book readers are, well, I'm sure are as happy as I were to see this. Randall Thor.
Yeah, congratulations, Rand. You won the Price is Right.
Yes,
You know,
you.
and I kind of, I know there's someone recently commented about it, who it was, who they think it was, and I think they said it was Rand. And again, I went back and watched the last episode before this one, and obviously with this one, I'm like, yeah, it really might be Rand at this point. Just to kind of end quickly, I love the cut scene, the way these last two scenes were cut together
Yeah,
with the knocking on the doors, because you're thinking like, oh, that's Matt. Or sorry, that's Rand knocking on the door. Oh wait, it's Lan. Well, where's Rand? And then he's knocking on Moraine's door, and then this is like, I'm the Dragon Reborn, and she's like, we must go now. And
right.
then Lan's like, she just masked her bond with me, and I'm like,
Which we found out she could do the
oh,
last episode. So yeah,
yep,
it's very, a lot of pieces are coming together. We get our
yep,
first view of the Blight, and
yes,
we are
woo,
heading toward the season finale, named The Eye of the World, at the Eye of the World. And frustratingly to me, we have no show, we have no show description. So we are all we
oh.
know is what we've seen.
Yeah, and as this background here that we have behind our pictures here, that blight seems endless and terrifying.
Yeah,
So I can only imagine what awaits them in the blight. Um, but looking forward to the season finale. It has been a great season. 100% on board. If you haven't watched this show, then you're absolutely missing out. Real quick, what would you rate this episode, Ben?
9. We're really getting into it now. We're breaking into the nines.
Yep. Yeah, I was gonna say 9 as well. I put 9 out of 10. There's a lot to love about this entire episode, and I kind of expected as much to being like the penultimate, but
Mhm.
yeah, it's gonna be great to see the finale. I can't wait. I'm sure it's going to be an hour packed full of fun, enjoyment, emotion,
Yeah.
lore, probably some new stuff as well. So all around exciting. But is there anything else you want to add on to this?
No, if you want a preview, Amazon did release on Twitter a 30-second preview, Twitter, Instagram. So go check it out if you want to see it. There's
Ooh,
some battle. There's going to be a lot of good stuff. So can't wait for Friday,
yep,
and then
indeed.
to come right back here and talk with you about it, because I'm
Yes,
sure we're going to have a
indeed.
lot to break down.
Yep. Everyone, stay tuned for that episode coming next week. Again, in the holidays this weekend, hope everyone has a safe time. Enjoy
Absolutely.
yourselves with whether it's you're traveling or not. Be safe. Uh, you know, Again, we'll be here next week. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, help support us for free. Hit that like button if you liked what Ben and I talked about and described for you and broke down today, from new stuff to the books to the lore. And until next time, we'll see you guys on the next video.
Yes, indeed. Cheers, y'all.
Cheers. Cheers.